What am I going to say about this?
Well, I was hoping you'd like it, but it doesn't sound like... Is something wrong?
Something's wrong, yeah.
Too many clothes? Too few clothes, perhaps?
Shall I put you out of your misery, yeah?
Please.
Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. That'll involve me performing a very, very late abortion. Don't laugh, Neil. This is not banter. This is me you. Can you not read people, Neil?
No. Yes, I can.
No, you can't. Otherwise, you'd stop talking. What else can't you read, Neil? You can't read the name of the shop. It's white on white. In other words, that is page 1 of the manual, isn't it? In fact, it's front cover of the book. Name recognition.
Yeah.
See, if you don't sort this out, Neil, the writing is on the wall for you.
That was a clip from Greed. I'm delighted to say I've been joined by its star, who is the one and only Steve Coogan. Hello, Steve. How are you?
Very well indeed.
It's very nice to see you. And this is Mark. He does the...
We're very familiar.
We're very familiar. Yeah. Just to get everybody up to speed, Steve was very kind to book my band in the 1980s. I think we were a very reasonable booking.
You were. You I don't know. I think you weren't very expensive. It was only about 300 quid, something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, 260 would have been for Mark. Which band was this? Was this the Bottlers?
This was the
Railtown
Bottlers.
Bottlers.
Yeah.
And how did they go down as you...
They were good. I remember you did this number where you got slower and slower and everyone lay on the ground.
That was it.
Yeah, it was good. It was really kind of it had its own thing. It was very sort of...
Is this a Manchester story?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't a Manchester thing. It was like sort of what do you call it? Not skiffle. What's the American term?
Is it skiffle and jug band, but we did call ourselves a skiffle band.
What do the Americans call themselves when they do that stuff?
Jug band.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. With the sort of
THS bass,
but you used a real bass.
Yeah, and although we also did use a THS bass, and we did indeed do "Let Me Go Home" whiskey that would end up with everybody falling out and then playing the instruments on the back, which we learned to do through busking because it was a way of kind of drawing
attracting attention.
Into Town Square outside the Royal Exchange.
So why does playing slowly make everyone lie down?
No, so what happened is at the end of the song, which is called "Let Me Go Home" whiskey, the idea is that the band get drunker and drunker. The song gets drunker and drunker, and it ends up with everybody.
And everyone ends up slowly lying on the ground and continue to play their instruments while they're lying down. So it's quite
including playing the double bass whilst lying on our backs. It was a good trick.
I feel as though I've missed out.
You
somehow. have. Anyway, all of which is nothing to do. There's no.
No, but it's a nice diversion. I'm very glad to have it brought up every single time.
There's no skiffle at all in this film. I don't think is there. Is there any?
No, it wouldn't. It would be totally inappropriate. Yeah.
Well, I should think. But the young character, which you don't play, the young Richard McCready, when he's at school, that's not going to be skiffly, is it?
No. It's a minor public school. I think it's the worst of all worlds. Really.
Anyway, Steve, before we go any further, so we've heard a clip. Take us into the world of Greed. Tell us how you got involved. Tell us about it.
Well, Michael Winterbottom, who I've worked with, if you include the trips as movies, which they are in America, I've done 8 movies with him. So it was the seventh outing with Michael, and he was doing it with someone else, and I heard about the project and I know how Michael works, which is a slightly unorthodox, sort of deconstructed way, and which I quite like. And he rang up and said, and we had a conversation about what he was doing, and he didn't have his lead actor for this project. And I said, well, I'll do it if you like. And he went and talked to the money people, see if they'd still pay for it if I was in it. And they said, yeah, okay, you'll have to do the slightly cheaper version. So that's how I got involved.
So
and
someone had dropped out, had they?
Well, actually, Sacha Baron Cohen had dropped out.
Okay.
Yeah. But strangely enough, his wife, Isla Fisher, then ended up playing my wife in the same movie, funnily enough. But no, it was also because of the content. It was about... what I like about Michael is that he talks about things that have matters of substance, but tries to do it in a sort of a deep waters lightly skipped over, I suppose is how you might put it. And he does that in a lot of other films, and and I quite like talking about serious things in a non-serious way. So, and it ticked those boxes.
Okay, so tell us about Richard McCready and tell us about the serious boxes that are being ticked.
Well, he is sort of representative of all the sort of super rich, this new breed of super rich, multi-billionaires that seem to have a higher profile with each passing year, and how they make their money, and in particular high street retailers, and how the fact that the very, very cheap clothes, because we have about 40 seasons a year now where people have to constantly, if you're a teenager, you constantly discard the clothes you were wearing 2 weeks ago because they're suddenly out of fashion. Create this sort of demand for fast clothes as opposed to fast food, and at a very cheap price. And of course, there's a supply chain that goes all the way back to people in the developing world, in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, places like that, where they get paid like $3.50 a day. So that the people who benefit from that, from these huge profit margins, can go on super yachts that we in fact go on in the film that cost £100,000 a day to rent. So we explore both those worlds, and the people who played the garment workers in the factories are real garment workers, and there are Syrian refugees in the film. They play themselves also. But as I say, all this content sounds very, very worthy, if you like, and sort of quite leaden. But Michael makes it funny and has me playing this slightly larger-than-life grotesque character to make it, to sugar the pill.
Yes. Who is... thinly veiled Philip Green.
Well, a thinly veiled Philip Green, yes, in terms of his personality, but not in terms of his physicality. Because I couldn't possibly... I didn't have enough time to gain that amount of weight. And I'm quite busy. So
Sacha Baron Cohen would have managed it.
He would. He's very committed.
Tom Hanks would have put on, the whole thing. I
know, yeah, and I could have done that, yeah. But and also I'm too vain. But
is your film suggesting that there's a link between the incredible poverty of the people employed by Richard McCready and the incredible wealth of Richard McCready?
Yeah, we invite the audience to do a bit of detective work and connect the dots between the super rich and the super poor.
And how close does the story that you tell of Greedy McCready cleave to the story of Philip Green?
Well, we don't. We have to be quite careful legally. Of course. We can't sort of. Well, I mean, in the film, so far as things that because it's sort of, some things are recognisable. Anything that he says which is sort of not very nice, is stuff that about which are things that he said. So when he says a lot of things before Select Committee, they're sort of directly lifted from testimony that he gave. And
including most memorably the "Stop looking at me."
Yes, that's right. Yes, stop looking at me. Take your glasses off. Oh, that sort of weird. Someone who's not used to being cross-examined, who has spent his whole life acting with impunity, suddenly
took offence at somebody looking
at him or asking him a question, because it was quite telling and revealing that, and so we sort of include that in the film, and
So. Presumably, this is one of those movies where the lawyers are going to be watching it very carefully. But your touchstone must be, if it's accurate, it's not libelous.
And you can sort of invent things if the things you invent aren't particularly disparaging. So that's fine. You can't. You say if he's not going to say, "I didn't drink coffee in the morning. I drink tea in the morning." You can't. He's not going to sue you for that.
No.
Right. I don't know. Let's see. But
your character.
But also, I'd say it's not really. I mean, it'd be wrong to interpret it as some sort of slight on him in particular. Although it is, it's more than that, because it's really it's about. There are many more pernicious practitioners of unscrupulous business practices, if you like, and he's in some ways a sort of minor player on the world stage. There are many more directors of big international, globally famous companies that don't pay their workers particularly well, and some of the people we were talking to don't even have running water, and they supply main high street companies with their clothes. So, and we sort of in some ways we owe a debt of gratitude to Philip Green, because unlike the other super rich multi-billionaires, they tend to keep a very low profile. They don't want to attract attention to themselves in case people start asking difficult questions. And whereas he was very happy to attract attention to himself and sort of play the pantomime villain in a way, sort of rise to the role. So he sort of helped put the issue on the map in a way. So.
The whole film is constructed around the build-up to a party, which is kind of constructed like a Roman games. And actually, there are two threads of the narrative. One of them is the story of this super-rich, greedy, modern character. And another is an ancient Greek narrative. And the two things actually start to dovetail rather beautifully. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how those two things connect?
Well, I mean, I think there is. It's all sort of based ostensibly around a party, a big sort of lavish party, similar to the ones that used to be famously thrown by Philip Green. And this one has a sort of Roman theme. He builds a sort of, as we did, a sort of mini amphitheatre to sort of emulate the sort of gladiatorial games and entertainment that Roman emperors and the like had. And but as the party unfolds, the organisation for this party, the lead up to the party, we have flashbacks that tell the story of Sir Rich McCready's rise to fame, success, and wealth. And I suppose in Michael, the director, writer's perspective, these are the modern emperors. You know, these oligarchs and these entrepreneurs are the emperors of the new world, and so what is a it's just quite a heavy-handed metaphor if you really want to know the truth.
What it does do is it implies that the same laws of fate that applied to ancient emperors still apply in the modern world.
Yes, I think there's sort of what seems like sort of fly on the wall documentary sort of really sort of changes tack towards it. It becomes like a morality tale with the sort of with the poetic moral resolution that only happens in morality tales and never happens in reality. Yeah. So the ending is a sort of an artifice, as it were.
Yes.
The ending that we wish for, I think the world should provide us with, but rarely does.
But it's dramatically justified because the drama needs to have a dramatic, and that's what it does. I mean, I think what works well. I'm a big fan of Michael Winterbottom's, as you know, and I think that what he does manage to do is to bring together those two things. On the one hand, the fly on the wall documentary of a greedy character that we might recognise, and on the other hand, this other thing comes in from left field and then actually takes over. So it does have a dramatic construct.
Yeah, it does. It looks like, well, his films always look less constructed than they are, and sometimes because they are less constructed than they ought to be. But he's, it's sort of. Michael's a strange way of filming. Normally, when you make a film, you have like a sort of safe area, like what used to call video village, where you have the director and all the sort of creative people who are off camera behind a sort of wall, and the fourth wall, as it were. That's not the case with Michael. So wardrobe, makeup, even continuity aren't allowed on the sets because the camera could point in any direction, and the only person there is Michael huddled behind the cameraman with a monitor around his neck, and everyone's radio mic'd, and they just move around. So often when you're in the scene, you look in any direction, you can't see anyone who isn't in the scene. So that helps you, as it was, submerge yourself in what's going on. And and Michael's, it means that there's sometimes a sort of and he films very quickly. So there is no continuity. You don't need to remember what you were doing when the camera's pointing in another direction because it was only 2 minutes ago. So he moves very fast. And he doesn't have any lunch break, and they bring around food on plates during the day, but he always finishes at about 5 o'clock, and so it's quite civilised. You start at 8 and you finish at 5, and then you go out and have dinner. But you work like the clappers while you're doing it.
And you made reference to the fact it's an old-fashioned morality tale, and I don't want to give anything away. I don't want it to be a spoiler or anything. But tell us about the lion.
Okay, so there's a big lion in the film, and. Who my character, Rich McCready, thinks he is somehow the equal of, as it were, and that with hilarious / catastrophic consequences. But it was a pretend lion. Although although I had to.
When you say pretend lion, you mean a CG lion?
A CGI lion. It wasn't someone dressed up as a lion.
There wasn't
nowadays the performers. It's incredible what they can do.
There wasn't a large budget, but
I mean, I've seen Cats, so it's like
yeah.
But people, when they see this movie, particularly, there's a sequence at the end when this is finished in the title sequence that your film is a morality tale, and you've got a bunch of information about trade and about inequality, which comes up as the title sequence.
Yeah, well, the way we figured it is that I always think that there's some remarkable, if you like, films out this year about important real stuff and important issues like, of course, the Parasite, which is the fantastic movie that totally deserved to win. I'm really pleased with it that won at the Oscars. Which talks about the disparity between the rich and the poor, and then there are other films out like Dark Waters and The Report and this stuff that I think are like a very very noble objectives, but the plight sometimes regretfully is that they're only seen by the people who already agree with the premise of the film, so it doesn't really change many minds, even though they're worthy and important films to make. And I think Michael's view is like try and entertain people and sort of like slip the message in under the door while they're laughing, sort of thing, and that's really what he was hoping to do with this, and sort of in terms of like the issues raised in the movie, we now talk about gender politics, and we talk about the environment and sexual identity and all the post Me Too stuff and diversity. All these things were all a part of national conversation now, but the one thing that seems to have escapes is sort of the overarching problem, the biggest thing facing the world today, which is this huge gap between the rich and the poor, and it almost seems too unwieldy a topic to talk about, so people tend to avoid it. It just seems your sort of shoulders slump if you even think, well, and I think it's almost like a few years ago we thought, well, we talked about poverty and we decided we couldn't do anything about it, so we just thought let's just move on. So, and what I hope is that people can take this conversation seriously, because it's not going to go away, and it's not even about necessarily about some huge global revolution. It's just about people behaving better, and like I say, these companies can be able to look after the welfare of the people who work for them without affecting their viability. They'll sometimes sort of protest that'll lead to their demise if they actually pay people a living wage, but that's not true.
Do you have to like the character that you're playing in order to be able to immerse yourself in? Because clearly, the character that you're playing in this film, McCready, is on almost every level reprehensible. He quite likes his family, and that's about as far as it goes.
Yeah.
Do you have to find things to like to play somebody?
Yes, I think you do. Well, they're not like you have to understand them and remember that they are flesh and blood, whoever they are, however badly they behaved. It's dangerous to be seen to be judging a character, I think. And there's something what I understand, I suppose, about a character like Rich McCready. It's quite a difficult one because it is pretty unrelenting, but he's quite witty, and if someone's witty, it will buy them a lot of credit even if they've badly behaved. And we can often maybe think of many people. Sometimes you think, well, I agree with that person politically, but I wouldn't like to spend an evening with him, and I don't like that person politically, but I quite like to have a drink with him because he seems more entertaining. Well, I often find that sort of thing, and I think with the Rich McCready character, he's charismatic, even though he's a bully. And you have to. What I have to understand about it is that someone who's probably outside the establishment and has had to battle, even though a lot of it's just nifty footwork, legal nifty footwork that's led to his great wealth. There's something, and in his directness and lack of ambiguity, you can't really accuse him of being disingenuous, because he literally, a bit like Donald Trump in that regard, he sort of seems to say he's quite literal,
yes.
isn't he?
Well, it's interesting. On the subject of billionaires and the super rich, it may well be that the presidential election ends up Bloomberg versus Trump. And Bloomberg was interviewed just this week, and it was quite entertaining, actually, because he was asked, do you think the electorate of America really want to see this as a competition between two billionaires? And Bloomberg says, oh, really? 2 billionaires? Who's the other one?
Yeah.
Really? That's great. That's great.
How much will that annoy Trump?
I know. I like that kind of thing. See, even though I would never agree with something like that, but if someone has if you laugh, then you've reeled people in just a little bit, haven't you?
But also, what's genius about that comment is that exactly as you say, how much it hurts.
Yeah.
Steve, what are you working on? What do we see you in next after Greed?
Let's see. Let me think. So I'm doing. Yeah, well, the next film I'm making is about. I'll give you a bit of detail. It's about the woman who found the body of Richard III in a car park in Leicester. About 5 years ago.
Yeah, we remember.
I remember this.
So it's about her, and I wrote the film with Jeff Pope, who I did Philomena
with you,
and another film we've still not yet made. But yeah, we're shooting that in the summer, and I'm quite excited about that. I'll be in that in a supporting role. I always try and sort of cast myself in some supporting role, so I can get a bit of extra money, basically.
And I do feel I should ask you every time now, when I interview you, after you told us about how Richard Gere hit you in that movie you were in together, were there any fisticuffs in this film, or was it all? No one took a pot shot at you
in Greed? In
Greed.
No, fortunately. Although Karim, who is the head of the Syrian refugees and is a real refugee, has a fight where he's surprisingly angry at the way the other refugees have been treated, and even though he doesn't actually punch the guy, whenever I watch it, I wince because he does it so convincingly.
Steve Coogan, it's always a pleasure to have you on the programme. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.